Hello, BookTube. It's a beautiful, beautiful day here in Boston, and earlier today I had a small spate of errands to run, and they were fun. It was good company. It was lots of enjoyment. And then when I was done with those errands, I was all by myself. The errands were done, and I had two alternatives. I had two choices at that moment, and I stated them clearly to myself in my mind. I thought, one, I could go to the grocery store, because my surly houseboy has been a little remiss in stocking up on some basics here at Hyde Cottage, and I've been noticing that, and it's fun to go to the grocery store anyway from time to time for things that I actually need here at the house. And the second option was they're in opposite directions and they take an equal amount of time, so I can't do both. I don't want to be gone that long. I can only do one of the two, and I can't do both because I can't loop them into the same trip. I either do one direction or I do the other. The second option was to go to the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston and stock up on some used books that I need like an extra hole in the head. Guess which one I did? I went to the Brattle, and I had a wonderful time. In fact, one of the ways that I know that the gods of fortune smiled on my choice is that the sale lot was lousy with dogs. There were dogs everywhere. They all wanted to smooch. I had a line of people waiting to smooch my face. And in case some of you are wondering what I mean by the sale lot, if you're new to the channel or aren't totally up on my 3,000 videos, the Brattle Bookshop is a used bookstore in Boston, and they're great. They're absolutely fantastic. 3 floors of just endless wonders. They buy all the time. They've always got a van out buying books, so you never know what you're going to see in any of your favorite sections inside the store. But in addition to all that, they also have a sale lot outside, which is where another building would ordinarily be, and it's full of bargain books. $1, $3, and $5 bargain books. And unlike the bargain books you see out in, sale lots outside other used bookstores, these are usually not discards. They're usually not rain-soaked, moldy ephemera. They're usually good books. In just a bewildering selection. There's no order out in the sale lot other than price. So it's a browser's paradise, and I had a blast. I always do when I go there. It was a little bit of a pang today because the weather is changing. The seasons are changing. Slowly but surely they are. Boston is right now enjoying a bit of an Indian summer, a bit of refulgence of warmth. But you know that when that comes crashing to an end, it's going to end on a dime, and it's not going to come back. We're not going to have this weather again for 9 months. And as time has passed, as I have reached the wise old age of 28, I have lost my appetite for browsing slowly outside in the Brattle sale carts when it's freezing outside, when it's freezing cold. Deb and I used to do that all the time. We used to go every day in any weather. We'd be out, the only ones out there, standing in a light sleet, just burbling about books like 2 old babushkas. Oh, remember this? Oh, that was fun. Oh, remember when everybody was asking about this one? Oh, I've never read this. If you, as icicles are forming on our heads. But maybe I would do that if I had her company every day. But I as it is, I tend not to do that in severe weather. And severe weather is coming. It doesn't feel it today. So I was extra grateful. It was a little pang because the Brattle sale carts are just an endless stream of delights. And at $1 a piece, you're free to indulge yourself, which feels wonderful. It actually feels wonderful to find a book on the Brattle sale carts that you've never heard of, or that you've often heard of, but you've never tried it. And for $1, you're not out anything. You can just add it to your armload. That's actually the way that I know to stop, is when I have a full armload, which is a great way. That's certainly not true at a retail bookstore anymore. A full armload would cost you literally $1,000, but at the Brattle, 10. So I got a stack of books, and I want to walk you through them. And the first one, of course, what would a trip to the Brattle be without a Penguin Classic? And I found a Penguin Classic there that I was shocked to realize the other day when I was looking at my Penguin Classics over in the other room. I have a whole wall of penguins, and it's not for decoration. It's one of the only places in my personal library that you can find me on a regular basis. I will go over there and just sort of stand at the penguin wall and pull down books here and there, not to mention the fact that I use them a lot. That I consult them a lot. It's amazing how vital, how relevant a timeless classic can be when you're doing a review of some new book. And the other day I was looking at that. I have it, it's kind of sort of organized a little. It could be organized a lot better. And I noticed that there was a book that I love that I was missing, and I found it at the Brattle. That almost never happens. It's the long narrative poem by Lord Byron. I have the Penguin selected Lord Byron, you know, and I have a much bigger selected Lord Byron and stuff like that. But I didn't until today have Don Juan, and now I do in this lovely Penguin edition. And the Penguin edition isn't just a reprint. This is one of the rare, relatively rare, I'd say probably 25% of Penguin classics aren't just a scrupulous and dutiful reprint of some classic with a new introduction. Some of them, about 25% of them, are critically brilliant. They're the ones you want. They're the edition of the work that you want. And this is that. This is look at the editions at the back. They go on for page after page after page of annotations at the back of. I mean, you get the play or you get the poem in all its raucous glory. This is such a funny poem. It's so much fun, and partially that was the point. Partially Byron wanted to prove that he could write a long and fun work, but it was also that he was a chameleon and a magpie. He absorbed the literature that was around him. He would never have written this book if he had been surrounded by the literature that had surrounded him 10 years before. Instead, he just absorbed the Italian absurdist comedy, the Italian burlesque of the literary world around him at the time. And there was always an instinct in him that said, I can do better than that, or I can certainly do that. And Don Juan was the result. And I love it. And I have, of course, the selected Byrons that I have little bits and pieces from it, but I want the whole thing. And in addition to that, there's no other edition, there's no other annotated edition that I would want in this case that would be any better. That's not often true. You know, you'll get Penguin volumes of, you know, Idylls of the King, Leaves of Grass, and you'll be happy to have it. I will be happy to have it. I love Penguin classics. But you'll also be on the lookout for that particular critical edition of the poetry of Keats or whatever that isn't the Penguin classic, but that is better, so that you can have both. And in this case, I don't need to worry about that. And then this next one, talk about something that never happens at the Brattle. I've said often that the sale carts of the Brattle, they are the one toll that they require of you to have access to their bounty, is that you don't put any demands on them. If you go to the carts looking for something, you not only won't find that particular something, you won't find anything you like. The gods pay attention to a bounty like the Brattle sale carts. So I wasn't expecting this at all. I had in the back of my mind, but I wasn't thinking that I wasn't in a million years thinking that I would see a copy. And it's a result of a BookTube thing. It's a BookTube related thing. I wouldn't have given it a second thought if not for BookTube. Jason Harrigan, over at his channel, is going to do. He was contemplating. He floated the idea, got enough response. He's going to do a read along of Foucault's Pendulum by Umberto Eco. And I read this book when it first came out and summarily dismissed it. It annoyed me. It seemed like a blobbish combination of pretension and dilettantism, without much to hold any of its a million digressions together. I had very little patience for it and have poo-pooed it to other readers in the meantime. But one of the glories of BookTube is that you get to know people. You get to know people by watching their channel. And one of the things you get to know is not only the difference that we all have in taste, that goes without saying, but you also get to know who is, I don't want to use any invidious terms here, but who is a serious reader. You get to know which readers you are going to pay attention to. And if you make that decision about a reader, okay, we're close enough to the same wavelength, I have to take you seriously. Once you've made that kind of decision about somebody on BookTube or in real life, and they sing the praises of a book that you have discarded, you don't discard them. You reconsider the book. So I guess in the back of my mind, I was thinking maybe if there's a copy of Foucault's Pendulum, I would get it just so that I could follow along the read-along. I could join the read-along. But I never actually actively expected it, much less a UK trade paperback. This is a UK trade paperback of the book. So there you go. So whatever lingering doubts I might have had about joining Jason's read-along, I'll leave a link to his channel just in case you don't know about it. But whatever lingering doubts I had are gone. I have now been nudged by fate to do that read-along. Then this next one is a nice Penguin trade paperback of the complete prose of Marianne Moore. Marianne Moore is, in my opinion, a great poet. and she also was a great writer. She like every other great poet, like every other great writer in American history, she did a lot of book reviewing on the side. You know, you've got this reputation, but you can't eat a reputation, and maybe you don't want to teach, or maybe you're teaching but it's committed elsewhere. A book section editor comes to you and says, look, I know you're really busy, but I can offer you the amount of money that is that electric bill, or, you know, that gas bill. It's not much, but that's what it will cover. Can I send you a couple of books and you just write them up? That was true when Marianne Moore was writing these things. It's true today. It's a very hard world to make a living at, but it's not a hard world to make a little money at. And this is the result. A wonderful floppy penguin of all of her prose. I have had this many, many times in many, many different editions, and always get rid of them. I'll always, one way or another, I get rid of them. I usually give them away. This one is a little too sorry, I'm seeing some schmutz on the back cover. This is a little too perfect for me. A floppy trade paperback like this that also has the penguin colophon, I doubt that I will get rid of this. I think one of the things I'm learning from my library tour, my endless library tour, is that really has to stop. Nobody's urgent to read Marianne Moore. You know, they might put it on their TBR. That's what TBRs are for. I think really my response, I should train myself so that my response when I mention something and someone says, "Oh, I really want that," is to say, "Okay, I will look for it for you," rather than, "Okay, here's my copy." I really have to do that. But this, I don't think I'm going to get rid of this at all. This next one, very much along the same lines, also my line of work. This is Minor Monuments by Howard Moss, who's an institution at the New Yorker forever and ever and ever. This is a collection of literary essays of his, ranging all over the map. I'm pretty sure that Marianne Moore is considered in here. Catherine Mansfield, Elizabeth Bowen. Elizabeth Bowen has a gigantic new Everyman's Library reprint of her collected short stories coming out, and Steve is, as Aubrey and Matron would put it, with child to see that volume. But also, you know, Dylan Thomas, Delmore Schwartz, Eudora Welty. So a whole bunch of, I know Moss's taste, and it's not mine. Mostly it's not mine. It mostly doesn't overlap with mine. But I have had and not had this book, and it belongs, this and the Marianne Moore belong in the little book room. Actually, so does Don Jewing. So, and one of the unspoken but nice objectives of going to a place like the Brattle is, for me, is to get books that I know are going in that other room. There is a gradation between this room and that room. This room is full of worthy books that I love, books that I consult and reread. But the little book room is closer to my heart. I know you know what I mean. I know that you have books like that yourself. You might not separate them, but it's nice when I'm doing bulk used book shopping like this, what turned out to be bulk, to get books that I know are going in there, that I know are not just, I'm not just going to, you know, pick at them and then resell them. So it doesn't feel quite like a waste of time. Then this next one, also a UK trade paperback. This is something that came up because of that library tour. I was touring my history books on the east wall of this room and noticing gaps. And one of the big gaps that was pointed out, a lot of you pointed out the Civil War, American Civil War. But another one that was pointed out was World War I. And I found this. I found a UK trade paperback of Lynn MacDonald's 1915, The Death of Innocence. And I love this book, and I'd much rather have the UK trade paperback than the American hardcover. And it's all about the change in the war, the change when the sort of bouncy, mindless optimism was bled out of the British Expeditionary Force, and all of a sudden everyone in all ranks of the Endeavour realized this was going to be a very long and horrible slog of a thing. And MacDonald goes straight to the sources and lets them do most of the speaking for her. This is very much that kind of a thing. So there's very little, even in a book this size, there's going to be very little in the way of windy summarizing. Instead, you're right in the trenches with the men who were there in all of the major battles, including Gallipoli. So glad to see it. It'll go on that history shelf. This next one, I have a copy of this already. I think I got it at the Brattle a little while ago. But this is the form that I want. I know that that's silly, but if it's $1, this is Charlie Glass. This is Tribes with Flags. And this was on my mind because of an author interview that I did with James Verini about his time in Mosul during the gigantic battle there that brought the caliphate down. And this is an ancestor, a kind of literary ancestor of that book. This is the author going through the Middle East, having all sorts of adventures, being right there in the tent, right there at the elbow of events, and then coming back and writing about it. And grudgingly, I must admit, writing about it beautifully. And I have a Picador, a UK trade paperback of this thing in the little book room. But this is even though it's the Ponzi contemplative cover, I still like this better. This bigger trade paperback. I will reinforce this and just make room for it. I will remove the UK cover and just put this one there instead. I want the book. In terms of political writing, first-hand writing, a little bit of war writing, and also in terms of travel writing, you have to have this book. It grudges me just a little to say it for a whole bunch of reasons we don't need to get into, but I recognized it right away as a classic. So I was happy to find this. Then this next one, I have not had this in forever. $1. This is Elizabeth Drew, the great Elizabeth Drew. This is her Washington Journal from the days of Watergate. And she is unbelievably good observer. Unbelievable. The idea of a book this big of Elizabeth Drew's writing, when I haven't read this since it came out. I think this came out in 1979? 1975. So a long time ago. I haven't read it in all that time. And that is in the air. This world that I knew so well, that I was paying such close attention to, is in the air again. We are now, a United States president is being impeached for massive corruption and for massively documented, obvious corruption. It's not like there's missing minutes of tape recordings or burglars at the Watergate. It's the guy himself making things much worse, confessing openly to crimes and not even seeming to realize it. It's again, in his case, in Donald Trump's case, it may be just stupidity. He has always been an unbelievably stupid person. Someone who, even when he was in his late 30s and early 40s, people in the New York real estate and show business world would go to an event, would meet him and his father, shake hands, talk for a little while, and always, unforced, at gatherings later, people would just start to giggle, and always someone would say, "God almighty, I've never met anyone that dumb." It just radiates off him. But it's not only that. It's not only stupidity that's causing all of what seems almost like a devil may care attitude towards just openly sharing evidence that's impeachable. It's also what I mentioned before, a millenarial mind frame, a mind frame that there's not only going to be no politics or governance after us, there's not going to be any world after us. And the only thing that makes that really alarming instead of just pathetic is that the capability exists, right? The actual capability exists. The President of the United States can launch a nuclear war. And so that's not theoretical anymore. That kind of millenarial mind frame, that kind of après moi le déluge, after me, nothing at all, that kind of attitude isn't theoretical anymore. So that might play into it. But either way, I'm going to reinforce this, and it is going to be a weird, shivery delight to read it again in light of what's in the news every day. I haven't looked at the news yet today. God only knows what's happened. I haven't looked. I will surf it myself with a little bit of a bath in the news a little bit later today. And then the last thing from this Brattle trip is a great autobiography, part one of a great autobiography. And I've had it in British trade paperbacks. I've also had it in UK and American hardcovers, and haven't got rid of all of them, gave them away. And I found part one, so I'm hoping that part two will show up at the Brattle soon. This is the great Anthony Burgess, and this is A Little Wilson and Big God, part one of his autobiography that ends with "You've had your time." And I'm hoping that if the same person had a copy of the second volume, and that it will show up at the Brattle. I'm hoping that will happen. That usually does. You can't force it. Again, you can't go to the Brattle and expect things. But I would really like both of these books. They are a brilliant, incredibly detailed essay in autobiography. Just This author was perfectly capable of phoning things in. He did an enormous amount of work, never turned down any work. But his autobiography, even if it was phoned in, even if he wrote it at breakneck speed, like he wrote quite a bit, it's brilliant. Just brilliant. I mean, this author wrote a whole library of stuff. It takes a long time to read all of Anthony Burgess, but in that library of stuff, there's a small percentage, I would say 15-20% of it, that is truly brilliant. And I count the autobiography as one of those things. So I'm hoping it would be great fun to read this again and to put it in the biography section where, as soon as I saw it, I realized I don't have it. And also it'll be kind of fun to look and see if maybe part 2 shows up, either at the Brattle or somewhere else. Maybe I'm destined to have both of them now. But there you go. That was an impromptu Brattle trip. And I had a blast. I talked with a bunch of people. I smooched with a bunch of dogs. I talked with the great people at the Brattle itself. Came back here in plenty of time for my frantic little dog. We went for a walk. I told her, she shared all the smells that were on me. We shared all of our adventures. Came back, settled down, took a deep breath, looked around me, and realized don't have any groceries. So I don't know what I'm going to do there, but I made my choice, and I'm not unhappy about it. So I'm gonna wrap this up for now and dig into these books, reinforce what needs to be reinforced, clean them up, and then inventory them, and then decide where they're going to go. So I'll wrap this up, but I will see you soon. Thank you, Book 2.